If you looked only at the Bahrain test results, it would be easy to conclude that Aston Martin are heading into the 2026 season in serious difficulty. The AMR26 encountered a range of technical problems, most notably with the Honda power unit, which significantly limited the team's running. The lack of mileage has left Aston Martin behind in basic understanding of the car compared to rivals who have already completed thousands of kilometers of testing, but internally the picture appears more structured than the results suggest. Following a troubled period of testing, Adrian Newey is understood to have taken a more central role in directing the development process. He has led technical discussions and set out clear priorities for both chassis and power unit work. That clarity of direction matters because Aston Martin are attempting to integrate multiple new elements at once, including the Honda engine and their own in-house gearbox. Although the AMR26 currently looks underprepared, there are indications that the main weaknesses remain technical problems that can be addressed. If reliability improves quickly enough, Aston Martin still have an opportunity to accelerate their development curve through the early part of the season. Heading into the opening race in Australia, Aston Martin faced the first real test of this project. The question is this: can Newey's technical leadership turn the AMR26 from a troubled project into a competitive car sooner than expected? If you want to understand what is really happening behind Aston Martin's difficult start, consider subscribing, and let's get into it. The scale of Aston Martin's difficulties in Bahrain is difficult to overstate. Across pre-season testing, the team completed the least mileage of any competitor and often struggled simply to keep the car running consistently. Much of the available track time was lost to reliability issues linked primarily to the Honda power unit, particularly repeated battery failures and a shortage of working components. That lack of running meant the team entered the final phase of testing, with only a limited understanding of how the AMR26 behaves across different conditions. This is a significant disadvantage in the first season of a new regulation cycle. Rival manufacturers accumulated thousands of kilometers of running, allowing them to refine energy deployment strategies and establish reliable baseline setups. By comparison, Aston Martin left Bahrain with major gaps in knowledge, particularly in areas that can only be understood through sustained running. Internally, however, there appears to have been little sense of panic. Team representatives described a technical environment in which Newey moved quickly to establish direction after the difficulties became clear. According to Pedro de la Rosa, Newey's leadership became particularly evident during engineering debriefs, where he outlined what needed to be done and ensured that departments were aligned behind a common plan. De La Rosa described these sessions as moments where the team understood exactly what was required, emphasizing that Newey's leadership was critical and that his direction was clear when problems arose. That clarity may prove essential because Aston Martin's current situation is unusually complex. The AMR26 is not only a new car but part of a broader transformation that includes a works partnership with Honda and a number of components produced in-house. Fernando Alonso acknowledged that the integration of key elements such as the gearbox had created additional challenges, reflecting the increased technical responsibility that comes with operating effectively as a factory team. The Honda power unit remains at the center of the immediate problems. Failures in the battery systems repeatedly interrupted running in Bahrain and forced the team to end some sessions early due to a lack of spare parts. These issues prevented Aston Martin from completing longer runs that would normally be used to understand tyre behavior and energy management. There are also indications that the power unit has struggled in areas beyond reliability. Energy recovery performance has been identified as a weakness, and concerns have been raised about the effectiveness of the turbo system. Some observers noted that the engine appeared to operate at relatively low speeds during testing, which could reduce turbo efficiency and overall performance. Whatever the precise causes, the result was a program that delivered far less usable data than the team had planned. This situation is made more difficult by the nature of Aston Martin's relationship with Honda. As the sole customer of the Japanese manufacturer, Aston Martin cannot rely on additional data streams from other teams. Rival engine suppliers benefit from having multiple teams running similar power units, allowing problems to be identified and addressed more quickly. Aston Martin must generate almost all of its data independently, which increases the importance of every kilometre completed. Former driver Juan Pablo Montoya highlighted reliability as the key unknown facing the project, arguing that the main question marks surrounding Aston Martin concerned not outright power, but whether the power unit could be run consistently at full performance. Without that reliability, the team cannot properly evaluate the aerodynamic and mechanical characteristics of the car. Even so, the technical picture is not entirely negative. Several figures within the team have suggested that the underlying concept of the AMR26 remains promising. The car attracted attention when it first appeared in testing because of its distinctive design and its interpretation of the new regulations. Newey himself has described the car as one of the more extreme interpretations of the rules, indicating that Aston Martin have pursued an aggressive technical direction. Aggressive concepts often require time to mature, and there are reasons why this particular project may have started behind schedule. Newey only began work in early 2025, several months after rival teams had already committed significant resources to their 2026 designs. When he arrived, he is understood to have pushed for substantial changes to the original concept, effectively restarting parts of the development process. That decision may have contributed to the limited preparation time before testing began. The AMR26 first ran relatively late and completed only a handful of laps during its initial appearance before encountering problems. Although that delayed start did not cause the reliability issues directly, it reduced the margin available to address them before the first race. Despite these setbacks, there are indications that the team believes progress can be made relatively quickly. Honda engineers have been working to identify the root causes of the failures, and there is an expectation that improvements could be introduced early in the season. Andy Cowell, formerly a leading figure in Mercedes' engine program, has been stationed in Japan to assist Honda's efforts to resolve the issues. The immediate objective is straightforward. Aston Martin need a car that can run consistently enough to generate meaningful data. Without that foundation, further development becomes extremely difficult. With it, the team can begin to explore the performance potential that remains largely hidden after Bahrain. Alonso has maintained a measured optimism about the situation, stating that the problems are solvable and that solutions are already being worked on. His assessment reflects an understanding that early season difficulties do not necessarily define the trajectory of a project, particularly in the first year of major regulation changes. There's also a broader context to consider. Aston Martin have invested heavily in facilities and personnel over recent years, including a new factory and wind tunnel intended to support long-term competitiveness. The AMR26 is the first car developed within that new structure, and it represents the starting point of a project intended to deliver results over several seasons rather than immediately. Newey's expanded role is central to that vision. By taking a more direct position in the technical leadership of the team, he has effectively become the focal point for decision-making during a critical period. This approach reduces the risk of conflicting development directions and allows the team to respond more quickly to emerging problems. What happens next will depend largely on how quickly Aston Martin can stabilise the reliability of the power unit. If the early races provide enough running to build understanding, the development rate could improve significantly. If the problems continue, the team may struggle to close the gap to rivals who already have a substantial head start. The early part of the season will therefore provide the first real indication of whether the Bahrain test was simply a difficult beginning or a sign of deeper limitations within the project. So, what do you think? Is Newey's takeover of the AMR26 development the first step towards Aston Martin's recovery, or evidence that the project is already under pressure? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.